Hey everyone, I hope all of you are doing great. So, we've already covered the first two parts of the ultimate photographic iceberg. Part 1 had the iconic photos and Part 2 contained the images with disturbing backstories. Now, as we descend, we have no other choice than to look at the cursed and dark region of this iceberg. It's going to contain nothing but the creepypasta images. Most of these images have unknown and mysterious origins, so a lot of the time these images are also labeled as, where did these images come from? Anyway, it's going to be a long iceberg, so let's just begin the video with the very first entry, the backrooms. On May 12, 2019, an image was posted to 4chan's paranormal board with an eerie message. If you're not careful and no clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old, moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you. This post marked the birth of one of the internet's most intriguing urban legends, the backrooms. Described as a pocket dimension one can accidentally stumble into, the backrooms consist of endless, empty office spaces with buzzing fluorescent lights and damp carpets. The concept has taken on a life of its own, inspiring a growing mythos that includes creepypastas, games, short films, and various other forms of media. Rather than delve deeply into the ever-expanding lore of the backrooms, let's focus on the image that sparked it all. The image perfectly captures the unsettling liminal space described in the text, evoking a sense of unease and the feeling that you shouldn't be there. Jeff the Killer. This image is one of the most iconic on the entire internet, known for its association with the Jeff the Killer creepypasta. The origin of this image remains uncertain. Over the years, many leads have surfaced but ultimately fizzled out. One prominent story involves a girl named Katie Robinson, who allegedly posted a photo asking if she was pretty on a 4chan board. She was reportedly bullied, with users editing and reposting her photo until it morphed into the infamous Jeff the Killer image. This cyberbullying supposedly led to her suicide. However, this story was debunked, as the real girl behind the photo is alive and unrelated to the rumor. Despite extensive investigations, the true origin of the image remains a mystery. The next photo is called smiledog.jpg. This creepypasta has been circulating the internet since 2008, initially appearing on 4chan before spreading widely. Its origins are mysterious, with no known source for the image, which only adds to its unsettling nature. In the summer of 2007, an amateur writer was trying to interview a woman named Mary E. She was believed to have first-hand experience with an urban legend he had heard about as a child. When the writer arrived at her house, Mary refused to leave her room for the interview. Her husband tried to comfort her for half an hour, but the writer eventually gave up and left, though he took notes on her incoherent ramblings and dreams through the door. The writer first encountered smiledog.jpg in 2005, an internet urban legend that fascinated him. Mary was rumored to have survived an encounter with smiledog.jpg, but there was no solid evidence of its existence. Not online, on forums, or anywhere one might expect. The legend described a husky in a dimly lit room with sharp, human-like teeth. It was said that the original 400 viewers, including Mary, suffered from nightmares and seizures. While various images were circulated online, none were confirmed as the original. Later, the writer received an email from Mary, apologizing for not speaking to him and offering advice. She revealed that ever since seeing Smile Dog, she had been haunted by nightmares in which the dog urged her to spread its image. She suspected that spreading the image might free her from its torment. She even received a floppy disk, presumably containing the photo, but she couldn't bring herself to pass the curse on to the writer. A month after this email, Mary's husband contacted the writer to inform him that Mary had taken her own life. He reiterated her warnings, urging the writer not to seek out the image. Sometime later, the writer received an email from an unknown sender claiming to have seen smiledog.jpg and attached the file, encouraging the writer to spread the word. The writer debated opening the file, pondering whether the legends and Mary's warnings were true. Ultimately, he decided to attach the image to the creepypasta. This story, known as smiledog.jpg, became a classic creepypasta, standing out for its blend of mystery and horror. The image of the husky, with its human-like teeth, continues to haunt those who encounter it, making it a timeless urban legend. The anonymity of its creator and the untraceable source of the image add to its eerie allure. GIF. On March 12, 2007, an anonymous user posted a GIF on 4chan's B-board. At first glance, the GIF, titled I'm Happy.gif, appeared static, showing a simple drawing of a smiley face with realistic eyes and a mouth. However, those who clicked on it witnessed a disturbing transformation. The smiley face's grin slowly morphed into a frown, and its eyes took on an increasingly angry look. The smiley face then emitted a scream so loud it could burst eardrums, accompanied by flashes of gruesome images. After about 5 minutes, the GIF displayed the text, "Have a nice day," and the user's computer would automatically close the browser and stop functioning, as if a virus had corrupted the hard drive. Shortly after their computers were infected, the users were found in their homes, skinned and mutilated, with a smiley face painted in blood next to their bodies. The founder of 4chan, Moot, consistently claimed that the GIF never existed and that the murders were unrelated. However, some believe the image still exists in the site's archives. Attempts to repost it are typically met with swift bans. While it's likely true that the GIF never existed and none of the horrific events occurred, it's still a compelling story. The extreme claim that everyone who viewed the GIF was murdered adds to its chilling nature, making it a memorable, short creepypasta. Slenderman pictures. When it comes to creepypasta photos, many of you probably think of the iconic Jeff the Killer image. However, another set of photos that often gets overlooked are the original Slenderman pictures. Slenderman actually began as an image creepypasta, emerging from a contest on the Something Awful forums. The user Victor Surge submitted these eerie images, and they went on to win the contest, forever embedding Slenderman into internet lore. The photos came with chilling captions that added to the mystery and horror. The first image featured a quote, "We didn't want to go, we didn't want to kill them, but his persistent silence and outstretched arms horrified and comforted us at the same time." This line gave a glimpse into the ominous presence of Slenderman without revealing too much. The second image had an even more intriguing caption. One of the few recovered photographs from the Sterling City Library blaze, notable for being taken on the day that 14 children vanished, and for what is referred to as the Slenderman. Fire at the library occurred 1 week later, actual photograph confiscated as evidence. This quote not only named the entity, but also hinted at its terrifying abilities. Slenderman's legend quickly grew, leading to video games, fan creations, and a significant presence on the internet. However, the character eventually became overexposed and its popularity waned. Ghost photos are images where people claim to have captured the presence of ghosts, often used as evidence of the supernatural. These photos have been scrutinized by both skeptics and believers for many years. Let's explore some of the most popular ghost images found online. One notable image from the 1950s shows an apparition in the top left corner, while the people in the photo appear completely unaware of the ghostly presence. The ghostly figure's appearance makes it difficult to determine what it might actually be. Another famous photo features a military group with a man circled as the unexpected guest. This man had died a few days before the photo was taken, yet there he is, seemingly wanting one last picture with his comrades. A particularly well-known image is the ghostly photo of John DeFeo, a boy killed in the notorious Amityville house. This picture was taken by Ed and Lorraine Warren, famed paranormal investigators. John was murdered by his older brother, along with the rest of his family, an event that inspired the Amityville horror movies. This image is said to be the last one of the boy. These ghost images are abundant on the internet. Whether these images depict real ghosts is open to speculation and discussion. The girl in the photograph is a certified classic in the world of creepypastas. Most people have likely encountered this short story online due to its perfect length for sharing and retelling. Here's the full story. One school day, a boy named Tom was sitting in class doing math, just 6 minutes away from the end of the school day. While working on his homework, something outside caught his eye. His desk was next to the window, and he noticed what looked like a photograph on the grass. As soon as school was over, he raced to the spot, eager to claim it before anyone else could. He picked it up and was delighted. It was a picture of the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen. She wore a dress, tights, and red shoes, with her hand forming a peace sign. Tom was determined to find this girl, so he ran around the school asking everyone if they knew her. To his disappointment, no one recognized her. When he got home, he asked his older sister, but she didn't know the girl either. Late that night, Tom placed the photograph on his bedside table and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, he was awakened by a tapping sound at his window, like a nail tapping. Scared, he listened as the tapping was followed by a giggle. He saw a shadow near his window, so he got out of bed, opened the window, and followed the sound of the giggling. By the time he reached the source, it had disappeared. The next day, Tom asked his neighbors if they knew the girl in the photo, but no one did. When his mother came home, he asked her too, but she also didn't know. That night, he placed the photograph on his desk and went to sleep again. Once more, he was awakened by the tapping. He took the picture and followed the giggling across the road, but suddenly he was hit by a car and died with the photograph in his hand. The driver got out and tried to help him. Then the driver saw the photograph and picked it up, noticing the girl in the picture now holding up 3 fingers. The Rake is a well-known figure in internet horror lore, its origins tracing back to the early 2000s on the 4chan forum. The legend began as a series of anonymous posts recounting eerie encounters with a mysterious creature in the woods. Descriptions of the creature were consistent: a humanoid figure with pale, gaunt features, unnaturally long limbs, and large, soul-piercing eyes that seemed to look straight through those who saw it. This being became known as the Rake, a name that would come to represent one of the most chilling entities in the world of creepypasta. Even if you've never heard of the Rake before, there's a good chance you've encountered its image. The most famous depiction of the Rake shows a nightmarish creature lurking in the bottom right corner of a photograph taken in a dark forest. Its glowing white eyes and long, skinny body give it an unsettling, almost otherworldly appearance. The image has been widely shared across the internet, haunting those who have seen it and sparking countless debates about its authenticity. Some claim that the Rake is a malevolent entity, one that stalks its victims and appears in their darkest moments. Its piercing eyes the last thing they see before being plunged into unimaginable horror. Zalgo originated from the Something Awful forums, much like Slenderman and other creepypasta figures. Initially, Zalgo's lore centered around his ability to alter images in comics, corrupting them with an eerie, eldritch touch. These altered comics depicted the corruption of childhood innocence, crafting an entity that seemed otherworldly and malevolent. Zalgo is said to have the power to taint anything he wishes, whether it's videos, images, comics, or even text. Common phrases in Zalgo's lore include, "He is Zalgo and he comes," highlighting his role as a prophesized bringer of the apocalypse. While Zalgo's origins were firmly rooted in image manipulation, his lore has evolved over time. He has become more of an ultimate evil, a nightmarish force that plagues the internet. Everything he touches turns into nightmare fuel, solidifying his place as one of the most terrifying creepypasta entities. Tower of Silence is a creepypasta that draws from elements of the Zoroastrian tradition and urban legends to create a chilling narrative. Here's the full story. A group of Indian officials were following leads on missing person reports from a city near the deep jungle. This led them to a Tower of Silence, or Dakma. The Dakma is a site used to dispose of those who had passed away, and it was seen as a way of giving back to nature by letting birds and wild dogs eat the remains. This photograph is the only image to come from this particular incident. The weirdness goes deeper, though. None of the bodies in this photo were ever identified, and the villagers who had reported missing people said that these were not those people. Also, the usual birds and dogs were nowhere to be seen. In fact, there was no wildlife aside from flies and maggots. At the center of the tower was a pool of blood that was several feet deep. Even with the blood from every dead body there, it was still more than they would be capable of producing. The stench that the blood gave off was enough for the officials to never want to return to this particular site. The expedition met with an unexpected end when one of the villagers accidentally kicked a small bone into the pit. The pit then exploded, sending blood and liquid flying out. Those that were covered in the blood were immediately sent to the hospital and quarantined. Those people would later go mad with fever and never recover. Officials later returned to the site with hazmat suits, but were met with an unusual sight. All the bodies were gone, and the blood pit was completely empty. Slideshow is another short yet chilling creepypasta that gets straight to the point. Here's the full story. Fingers trembling with excitement, I opened the package. Just as I had hoped, it was the camera I won on eBay. With mild delight, I realized that I had received a better deal than I had planned, because the previous owner had left the memory card in the slot. Before sending an email to the seller, alerting them of the mistake, I decided to see if anything was on it. Setting the camera on slideshow, I watched as it displayed a picture of a shipping label. My confusion turned to horror, as the next image was of a person brutally murdered. The rest of the card contained alternating pictures of mailing addresses, followed by murder scenes. The last image was of the shipping label from the box I had just opened. The Expressionless. In June 1972, a mysterious woman in a blood-soaked white gown appeared at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. Despite the unusual circumstances, it was the woman's inhuman appearance that sent those who saw her fleeing in terror. She resembled a mannequin with flawless skin and lifeless, emotionless eyes. Her face was devoid of any features except for heavy makeup, and she carried a kitten in her mouth, clamped so tightly that blood still dripped from its lifeless body. The woman, later known as the Expressionless, exhibited an unnatural calmness and did not resist as doctors restrained her. However, when they attempted to sedate her, she fought back with an incredible force. As one of the doctors questioned what she was, the Expressionless smiled, revealing sharp, spike-like teeth too long to fit in her mouth. Before security could arrive, she attacked, ripping out the doctor's throat and whispering chilling words into his ear before feasting on the approaching guards. The Expressionless vanished after the incident, and despite the terror she left behind, she was never seen again. The Portraits is a well-known short creepypasta that has carved a niche for itself in the world of internet horror. The story is brief, just 3 paragraphs long, but it masterfully sets up a creepy premise and delivers a chilling conclusion. Here it is in full. There was a hunter in the woods who, after a long day of hunting, found himself lost in the middle of an immense forest. As night began to fall and the oppressive foliage closed in, he decided to head in one direction until he found his way out. After what felt like hours, he stumbled upon a cabin in a small clearing. Realizing how dark it had grown, he decided to see if he could stay there for the night. The hunter approached the cabin and found the door ajar. No one was inside. Exhausted, he flopped down on the single bed, intending to explain himself to the owner in the morning. As he looked around the cabin, he was surprised to see the walls adorned with several portraits, all painted in incredible detail. Without exception, they appeared to be staring down at him, their features twisted into expressions of hatred and malice. The more he stared back, the more uncomfortable he became. Making a concerted effort to ignore the many hateful faces, he turned to face the wall and, exhausted, fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, the hunter awoke to the bright sunlight streaming in. Blinking, he turned to look around and discovered something shocking. The cabin had no portraits, only windows. The Portraits is a prime example of short horror done right. It plays on the unsettling idea of being watched by strangers while you sleep in an unfamiliar place, and it doesn't over-explain itself. It gives just enough detail to instill fear and leaves the rest to the imagination. Satellite images. The story centers around a person who, due to a car accident, is confined to a wheelchair and unable to leave their apartment. To cope with their situation, they spend most of their time exploring the world through Google Earth. The narrator's typical activity involves choosing a random city, then virtually walking down its streets, observing the daily lives of people. This brought them comfort and a sense of connection to the outside world. One day, while virtually roaming the streets of Tokyo, they noticed a woman wearing distinctive red shoes, which caught their attention because the narrator owned a similar pair. This seemingly mundane observation felt like a small connection to a stranger on the internet. Feeling content, the narrator decided to call it a night. The following morning, they visited Paris via Google Earth, only to be startled by the sight of the same woman in red shoes. However, when they explored Berlin next, they encountered her again. Each time she appeared, she seemed closer to the camera, her face turning more towards the narrator. No matter which city they visited, the woman with the red shoes always appeared, getting closer with each sighting. In a final attempt to break the cycle, the narrator switched to their own city. Once again, there she was, staring directly at them. Believing it must be a prank, they checked the live camera feed outside their apartment building and saw no one. Relieved, they logged off Google Maps, determined never to use it again. However, a knock at the door shattered that peace. The narrator had installed a camera to monitor visitors. When they checked it, they were horrified to see the woman with the red shoes standing there, staring directly into the camera. Her face remained blurred, just like on Google Maps. Our next creepypasta is titled Janice. It's a rather straightforward tale about a man who delves too deep into the darker corners of the internet. We've all stumbled upon the oddities of the web, but the narrator of this story, Mark Spielman, made it his full-time occupation. Mark worked for the police department, tasked with uncovering illegal websites and reporting them to the authorities. This meant he often had to endure some of the internet's most disturbing content. After starting his job, Mark quickly got to work, uncovering what the web tried to keep hidden. His initial assignments were relatively standard until he stumbled upon a site called Sweet15.com. Given the name, Mark suspected it might be a site frequented by child predators. As he explored the website, it initially seemed aimless. The first image he clicked on was labeled Kathy.jpg, showing a young girl smiling at the camera. She appeared to be around 15 or 16 and seemed perfectly fine, not in any compromising situation. However, Mark noticed something odd. The image name had changed to Janice.jpg. Curious, Mark navigated back to the main page and clicked on another link with a different girl's name. Once again, he found himself looking at the same picture of Janice. Every link he tried led back to that same photo. Even when he brought in colleagues for help, they all saw the same image repeatedly. Despite there being nothing overtly illegal about the website, Mark felt like the site was playing a twisted joke on him. Unable to shake the feeling that there was more to discover, Mark went home that night but couldn't sleep. His mind raced, and he felt compelled to dig deeper into the site. He returned to Sweet15.com and scrolled through the list of names until he found a file called TrueJanice.jp at the bottom. Upon clicking it, he saw the same photo but in black and white. Mark discovered an embedded link within the picture and clicked it. Suddenly, his computer crashed, displaying the infamous blue screen. After some tinkering, he managed to restart his computer, only to find that all his applications had been deleted. A pop-up informed him that 1,000 photos were being copied to his main drive. The desktop background had also changed to the black and white photo of Janice, but this time, she appeared to be frowning and looked terrified. Once the download finished, Mark began examining the photos. The first image showed Janice, but as he flipped through them, he noticed subtle changes. Her smile gradually turned into a frown, and eventually she was depicted screaming in terror. The pictures became progressively darker until they were just black screens. Mark continued clicking through the images until a room appeared. At the center of the room was a bed with something covered by a blanket. As the sequence continued, a man entered the room, pulled off the blanket, revealing a girl who was bound and had her abdomen cut open. The man began operating on her while she was still alive. The second-to-last photo, numbered 999, was a close-up of the girl's face. It was Janice, lifeless and staring blankly into the camera. The final image showed a question mark with the words, "Who is Janice?" written beneath it. After the incident, Mark went missing, and the case was dropped due to a lack of leads. Detectives later discovered a code hidden in the Janice image, which, when combined, created a video file. The officers investigating this deleted the video and refused to discuss it. In the 1940s, Russian scientists allegedly conducted a disturbing experiment on 5 political prisoners, aiming to test the effects of extreme sleep deprivation. The prisoners were promised freedom if they could stay awake for 30 days and were sealed in a small chamber, exposed to an experimental gas stimulant to keep them from sleeping. The experiment quickly spiraled into madness. Initially, the prisoners engaged in emotional conversations, but by day 6, paranoia set in, and they stopped communicating. One man began screaming uncontrollably, tearing his vocal cords, while others defecated on torn pages from books and stuck them to the chamber's glass portholes. By day 15, silence fell, and when the scientists opened the chamber, they discovered the prisoners had mutilated themselves, with flesh and internal organs exposed and self-inflicted wounds visible. The prisoners, despite their horrific injuries, violently resisted any attempt to sedate or treat them, begging to stay awake even during surgical procedures. The experiment ended in bloodshed, with only one prisoner surviving to confront the scientists, declaring that they were the embodiment of a primal madness that lurks within every human being. While the Russian sleep experiment is purely fictional, it has been influenced by real-life historical experiments and psychological studies, such as the Stanford prison experiment. It remains one of the most popular and terrifying creepypasta stories. This creepypasta blends elements of both video and image horror. Some of these tales often overlap into other genres. A college student, preparing for their first year, was in need of supplies, with a laptop being the last item on their list. After almost giving up, they spotted an ad in the newspaper. The student drove to a house on the edge of the woods and bought a decent Dell laptop from a man who was thin and dressed in a worn flannel jacket. What stood out was his evident relief upon selling the laptop, which the student found odd. Back at their apartment, the student booted up the laptop, only to discover it hadn't been wiped as advertised. Before they could reset it, a series of video and image files with simple names caught their eye. The first video file, titled 001, showed shaky footage from inside a car, trailing a woman who had just left a bar. The next video, 002, continued this narrative, following the woman to her home. In the following video, the car parked in the lot of the woman's house, capturing her entering. There was a brief pause before the house lights went out. Then, another person in a black hoodie quietly approached the house and entered. By the fourth video, the hooded figure was seen placing something in the bed of their truck and driving away. For a brief moment, the video showed the truck pulling up to a house that looked eerily similar to the seller's. The fifth video, shot inside a house, was almost too dark to see anything until muffled screams were heard. The camera panned up to reveal the beaten and bloody woman from the earlier footage, with the camera slowly zooming in on her face before cutting out. The sixth video introduced a new character, a woman in rubber gloves and a respirator pouring something into a bathtub. She dragged a black garbage bag, clearly containing the woman's body, and deposited it into the tub. The student turned the laptop over to the police and later discovered some details about what they had seen. The murdered woman was the girlfriend of a married man, and his wife was the one disposing of her body. However, how the man selling the laptop was connected, or why he had the same truck, remained mysteries for the police to solve. Anomaly is a creepypasta created by Rambetis. It first appeared on 4chan before being posted on the Creepypasta wiki. The narrative begins with the poster explaining that they're sharing something they shouldn't, and have chosen 4chan to remain anonymous. The narrator, who works for a printing company that specializes in producing coffee table books, recounts an unusual project. These books are typically filled with images that people flip through casually but rarely read in full. The story takes a turn when an elderly man contacts the company, offering a unique project, a collection of photographs he considered invaluable. He wanted the company to publish a book titled Anomaly, reflecting the unusual nature of the images. Initially skeptical, the company was convinced to proceed after reviewing a few of the photos and accompanying descriptions. The old man was highly protective of his collection, sending only one photo at a time and requiring the return of each before sending the next. About a third of the way through the project, he suddenly withdrew, hiring a lawyer to void the contract and threatening legal action if the company attempted to publish the book. Frustrated by the wasted effort, the narrator decided to leak 14 of the photos online. The first photo shows a group of school children, taken shortly before a tragic fire in 1908 at Collinwood, Ohio, claimed the lives of all 172 students, 2 teachers, and 1 rescuer. The second image features a woman with a large dog. It was taken by folklorist Charlie Noonan, who disappeared after seeking out this mysterious woman in Oklahoma. The camera, later found at a pawn shop, contained this final image. The third photo depicts Union Army soldiers just before the Battle of Antietam. The man on the far right lost half his face and an arm, with the damage in the photo corresponding to his injuries. The fourth image allegedly shows the only existing photograph of the Axeman of New Orleans, taken by a traveling French photographer whose daughter found the image after his death. The fifth photo, taken in the Grand Caverns of southwestern Virginia, appears to show cryptids living in the caves. The photographer, Orrin Jeffries, fled the cave in fear after capturing this eerie image. The sixth picture, taken at the scene of a car crash, shows the ghostly figures of twins who died in the accident, seemingly watching the aftermath as their mother survived. The seventh photo captures a group of children with a donkey. Tragically, they were dismembered in an accident, precisely where the damage on the photograph appears. The eighth image shows a ghost attending the hanging of her murderer, a drifter who had taken her life and was subsequently executed by the townspeople. The ninth photo depicts a woman lost in the underground tunnels of an asylum. The 10th image captures a family photo with the ghostly presence of a deceased uncle, known for his pranks, who appears as a final joke. 11. In 1935, a woman named Josephine Yerno disappeared during her nightly walk. She reappeared 3 years later, unaware of the passage of time, and continued her walks until she vanished again. The 11th photo shows her on one of these walks. 12. The 12th image depicts a mill notorious for child labor, with a ghostly figure visible in a window, unreflected in the lake below. A 9-year-old girl tragically lost her life at this mill, leading to the implementation of child labor laws. 13. The 13th photo shows a girl named Lily Palmer dressed for Halloween with her nanny. Later that year, Lily tried to claw out her own eyes, claiming to see things crawling in them. This image supposedly captures the onset of her mysterious illness. Okay, so the 14th one is a photo of the first ever atom bomb, and some people say the uncropped version shows a UFO. But I stared and didn't find it, so I'll just read the most common description given with this 14th photo. This is one of several famous photographs taken of the first ever nuclear detonation. Conducted by the U.S. Army on July 16, 1945, in the White Sands Proving Ground, located in the Jornada del Muerto Desert, about 35 miles southeast of Socorro, New Mexico. The setting off of this implosion-designed plutonium device, the same method used in the Fat Man device dropped on Nagasaki, ushered in the atomic age and the eventual arms race between the United States and Russia. Only a handful of people were aware that this photo was cropped before it was ever released to the public, and they are all now dead. One of them was the original photographer, who gave the author a copy of the original on the condition that it be kept out of the public eye until such a time that the citizens of the world could handle the ramifications of what it depicts. The author remains uncertain whether this criteria has been met, but given that he likely owns the last extant copy, he has decided his responsibility rests with the truth. Mickey Mouse Basement. Mickey Mouse, the beloved cartoon character created by Walt Disney, has been a source of joy for children and adults alike for generations. However, the internet has a way of taking even the most innocent figures and casting them in a disturbing light. And there is one particular image that does just that with Mickey Mouse. The photograph in question reveals an old, dilapidated basement that appears to have long been abandoned. The atmosphere is dark and unsettling, with every corner of the room exuding an air of decay and neglect. In the distance, peering around a corner, is a figure dressed in a Mickey Mouse costume. But this is no ordinary costume. The man wearing it seems to be intentionally evoking a sense of fear rather than joy. The mask, distorted and squished, gives the character an eerie, almost grotesque appearance, far removed from the friendly face known to millions. The unsettling nature of the image lies in its stark contrast to the cheerful and wholesome character Mickey Mouse is meant to embody. It's as if the familiar has been twisted into something nightmarish, leaving viewers with an uneasy feeling that lingers long after they've looked away. This man. Have you ever seen him in your dreams? This mysterious figure is said to have appeared in the dreams of people around the world, primarily those living in major cities. In these dreams, he might engage in conversation, offer advice, or simply be a presence. Intriguingly, everyone who claims to have seen him in their dreams insists they've never encountered him in real life. The story suggests that at least 2,000 people undergoing therapy reported seeing this man. The nature of the dreams varied significantly. In some, he was a kind and helpful figure, while in others, he exhibited violent and malevolent behavior. Despite numerous reports, no one has identified a real person matching this man's distinct features. As it turns out, this man isn't a supernatural entity, but a creation of a marketing company. The figure was designed as part of a publicity stunt, possibly to promote a yet-to-be-released movie. A website, thisman.org, was set up as part of the hoax, featuring fabricated accounts and images from the public trying to identify the man. The site also contained theories attempting to legitimize the phenomenon. While this clever marketing ploy didn't seem to promote anything specific, it did succeed in embedding this man's image into the collective subconscious of the internet. Pass It On is a creepypasta story from the No Sleep subreddit. The story centers on a young, imaginative child who invents a game to stave off boredom in class. Before the game, the narrator would often daydream, but this new activity quickly became a favorite. The game had no official name, as naming it would spoil the fun. The kids simply referred to it as taking notes. The rules were simple. The narrator would write something on a piece of paper, anything from a joke to a story fragment or random words, and pass it to another student, who would then add to it before passing it along. The first rule was to avoid getting caught by the teacher. The second rule required each recipient to contribute to the note. The final rule was to pass it on after adding something. The game concluded when the paper returned to the narrator, who would read the contributions aloud during recess, much to the amusement of their classmates. This activity made the narrator the most popular kid in class, helping them to make real friends and rely less on their imagination. The game started innocently, with the narrator writing something down and passing it around. However, things took a dark turn when the note reached a girl named Lydia. She screamed and dropped the paper, claiming she saw a big spider. The game continued until the note returned to the narrator. Lydia approached the narrator later, asking them not to share the note at lunch, which puzzled them until they looked at it. The note, which began with the usual childish scribbles, contained a gruesome drawing halfway down the page. It depicted Lydia tearing herself open, rendered with a skill far beyond that of any classmate. The narrator agreed not to show the note, claiming it was lost. The next day, the class felt different, especially since Lydia's chair was empty. The atmosphere was tense, particularly among those who had seen the drawing. Despite initial reluctance, the narrator started a new note, which circulated until it returned with another disturbing image, this time of a classmate named Brian. The following day, Brian was also absent. Desperate to end the game, the narrator wrote, "I don't want to play anymore," but the note inexplicably read, "Pass it on," in perfect cursive, unlike the narrator's handwriting. The note continued circulating until the teacher, Mrs. Knott, confiscated it, placing it in her desk drawer. The game seemed over, but 7 students never returned to school. The children were spared the details, but the narrator instinctively knew what had happened to their missing classmates. Years later, while drinking alone in a bar, the narrator encountered an elderly woman who looked vaguely familiar. The woman, who turned out to be Mrs. Knott, handed them the original note, which she had kept all these years. Cursed Teletubbies is a bizarre and unsettling image that's been circulating online for years. The photo features a child in a hospital bed, surrounded by people dressed in what appear to be homemade off-brand Teletubbies costumes. These costumes are far from the cheerful characters from the children's show, adding an eerie vibe to the scene. Upon closer inspection, the original photo seems to have been taken in a hospital, as indicated by the hospital bed, IV pole, and a poster of Dutch footballer Dennis Bergkamp, suggesting the location might be in the Netherlands. Interestingly, the image looks like a photo of another photo, and the earliest known appearance of it online was in a Reddit post from December 2nd, 2015. The post was captioned with a sarcastic remark about how being sick as a kid wasn't bad enough, referring to the unsettling presence of the strange Teletubbies. The original uploader later commented that they saw the image on the wall of a children's ward in an English hospital, under a heading about celebrities who visited. While we now have some clues about the photo's origins and location, the identities of the child in the image and the people in the costumes remain a mystery. Red Moon is a creepypasta written by Avenging Angel. On July 18, 2020, NASA launched a spacecraft named the Goliath, carrying 6 crew members on a mission to establish the first colony on the moon. The mission required maintaining radio communication, which was only possible on the side of the moon facing Earth. As a result, the astronauts were instructed to remain on that side to ensure constant contact. The chosen location for the colony was relatively smooth, with few craters, making it ideal for their needs. The astronauts were to keep electronic journals throughout the mission, documenting their experiences. The primary risk they faced came from meteors, as the moon's lack of atmosphere offered no protection against them. Initially, the daily journals were routine, filled with discussions about potential sites for schools and hospitals, infrastructure plans considering the moon's gravity, and other practical considerations. However, on September 17th, the messages stopped, and there was no word from the crew. NASA waited, hoping it was a simple delay. Eventually, the missing videos were recovered, revealing the following. The first video, dated September 16th, shows the astronauts exploring a crater near their designated colony site. The 10-minute video seems normal until the crew mentions hearing scratching noises from within the crater. These sounds weren't audible in the recording. The second video from September 17th captures the crew investigating a much larger crater. As they approach, the scratching noises become distinct and unsettling. One astronaut, visibly frustrated, walks toward the crater's edge, only to be abruptly pulled in by an unknown force. The video cuts off. The final video has a different title, Code 7700 Please Help. In it, an astronaut, visibly distressed, speaks urgently into the camera from an oxygen tent. He reports that communication with NASA is down and that 2 crew members have been killed. As the scratching noise intensifies, the camera is knocked aside, capturing the scene's chaotic final moments. Blood splatters against the tent as the video ends abruptly. A 4-man team was later sent to repair the communication tower. Upon their return, none of them were willing to discuss what they had witnessed. The painting is our next creepypasta, written by Meek and available on creepypasta.com. There are actually 2 stories with this name, and given its simplicity, it's likely there are countless others with the same title. The narrator begins by recounting the story of his brother's disappearance, more accurately, his kidnapping. The kidnapper was described as meticulous and professional, as there were no fingerprints or signs of forced entry. However, the narrator knows the truth. It all started when their dad discovered a painting in the attic. The painting depicted a tall gray house surrounded by grass, perched on a cliff's edge overlooking the ocean. The narrator's mom recognized the words written on the back of the painting as Welsh, but didn't translate them. While the narrator didn't like the painting, his dad loved it and hung it in the boy's room. One night, the narrator woke up at 2 a.m., feeling hot and sweaty. Noticing his brother Jaime still asleep, he quietly got some water from the kitchen. When he returned, he noticed a strange black shape on the painting, a shape resembling a man that he hadn't seen before. The next day, the figure was gone, and no one believed him, not even himself. The following night, the figure reappeared, this time larger and in a different position. Terrified, the narrator hid under his blanket and eventually fell asleep. The next night, he woke again at 2 a.m. and found the painting completely black. Paralyzed with fear, he crept towards the bedroom door and ran to the bathroom, locking the door behind him. As he hid in the tub, he heard the creaking of floorboards and someone approaching the bathroom door. When he called out, he received no response, only the sound of scratching on the wood. The scratching stopped, and whatever it was, walked away. The next morning, he woke to his dad banging on the door, calling for the two boys. When only the narrator emerged, they called the police. On the bathroom door, they found deep gash marks. To this day, his brother has never been found, and the narrator is convinced that the entity from the painting took him. The painting itself changed. Now, a small child inside the house appeared to be crying, looking suspiciously like his brother. But no one believed him. Now an adult, the narrator keeps the painting in the attic, occasionally hearing footsteps from up there. He calls out his brother's name each time, but there's never a response. The image associated with this creepypasta is The Crying Boy by Bruno Amadio. SCP-3199. SCP-3199 represents a species of sapient Category 5 biological entities with currently unknown origins. Tissue samples from these entities show a mix of DNA from silky chicken, chimpanzee, stoat, adder, and human. These creatures are typically hairless, covered in a thin layer of albumin-like secretion, and stand at an average height of 2.9 meters. Mature specimens weigh around 780 kilograms, while hatchlings weigh approximately 360 kilograms. Autopsies have revealed that the cervical vertebrae of mature SCP-3199 instances are made of cartilage instead of bone. This allows their necks and throats to twist and dislocate up to 340 degrees in either direction, which is crucial for their unusual reproductive process. SCP-3199 are opportunistic hunters, targeting live subjects within an as-yet unidentified radius of about 0.6 kilometers around hatchlings that haven't reached full maturity. Their average speed is recorded at 25 kilometers per hour. Upon contact with humans or other animals, SCP-3199 will proceed to liquefy the internal organs and bone structures of their prey. The resulting cadaver is then moved to the nearest hatchling. Regardless of SCP-3199's appearance, the accompanying image is chilling. It evokes a profound sense of dread, making it something you definitely want to avoid encountering, especially at night. Level 94 is a well-known entry in the Backroom's lore, often depicted as a classic liminal space image. Interestingly, this image existed before the Backrooms gained widespread popularity. On April 30th, 2022, someone posted on Reddit asking for more information about the image. The top comment revealed that the image was created by an artist named Gabriel Traversat, linking to their Tumblr page. If you scroll through their Tumblr, you'll eventually find the original Level 94 image. Traversat crafted this eerie scene by combining and editing various photos to give it a dreamlike quality. The same artist is also responsible for another famous liminal space photo. This one features a house with a rainbow, a surreal image that became iconic in its own right. Even though these images were clearly digitally manipulated and not real locations, many people, including the original commenter, found them so serene and inviting that they wished they could actually visit or live in such places. Danny Boy is a creepypasta that first appeared on the Creepypasta wiki in 2015, attributed to a user named Jake Wick. Though not overly long, its intriguing format presents it like a real missing persons case. The 1980s in America, especially during the so-called Satanic Panic, wasn't an ideal time for kids. Children were disappearing frequently, and many believed cults were to blame. I grew up in a small town in the Sunshine State, but as time passed, things became increasingly bleak. My life took a downturn when I was 12, living in a modest one-story house with my parents and my 8-year-old brother Danny. Danny could be quite annoying, constantly getting on my nerves, though I loved him deeply. Occasionally, we got along, and those moments were genuinely special. Our time together ended on April 13, 1984, a day that now feels like a distant, dreamlike memory. After school, Danny and I returned home to find our father still at work and our mother gone, leaving a note on the fridge. "Please run to the supermarket and pick up eggs so I can make you a cake." The next day was my birthday, something I had almost forgotten. I instructed Danny to stay home while I ran to the store, but he insisted on coming along. After some argument, I realized I couldn't leave an 8-year-old alone, as my parents would have been furious. I reluctantly agreed, telling him to keep quiet as we left for the store. Naturally, he pestered me the entire way. By the time we arrived at the supermarket, I was at my wit's end. I pulled Danny aside and scolded him, though in hindsight, I wish I had just embraced his irritating behavior. I turned away and headed straight for the poultry aisle, relieved to find the eggs quickly. With the eggs in hand, I went to check out and then looked for Danny. To my horror, he was nowhere to be found. Frantically, I searched the store, asking customers if they had seen a short, blonde boy. No one had. Desperate, I asked customer service to call for him, but Danny never came. The worst part was returning home to tell my parents. My birthday the next day was the worst one ever, and I still despise that day for this reason. The police searched for weeks, and my parents tirelessly posted missing person signs around town. I couldn't fathom what had happened. My parents scolded me nightly, and I sank into depression, turning to alcohol for solace. After a month, the search was called off with no leads. A few weeks later, the police summoned my parents, showing them a photograph found in the parking lot of an abandoned store. The case remains open to this day. The narrative of this story resembles a missing persons documentary, detailing the events leading up to Danny's disappearance and the discovery of a piece of evidence that keeps the story alive. Teddy isn't your typical image-based creepypasta. I don't know its origin or what exactly it depicts, but that's not the point. It's downright creepy. The creepypasta begins with the narrator recounting how their sister owned a creepy stuffed teddy bear with an unsettlingly realistic face. The bear terrified the narrator so much that they refused to be in the same room as it. Because the family had a dog, the bear had to be placed on a high shelf in the hallway to prevent it from being chewed on. Every night, as the narrator headed to bed, they would catch a glimpse of the bear's face peeking around the corner, always seeming to stare at them. As the years passed and the sister outgrew the bear, it was relegated to a toy cabinet, which unfortunately ended up in the narrator's room. Night after night, they would wake up to see the bear staring in their direction from the cabinet. One night, however, the bear was no longer in the cabinet, but on the floor at the end of the room. Assuming it had simply fallen, the narrator went back to sleep. Waking up again, they found the bear had moved closer. After a brief struggle with sleep, they opened their eyes to find the bear at the foot of the bed. Panicked, the narrator pulled the covers over their head. When they peeked out again, the bear was gone. Dismissing it as a sleep-deprived hallucination, they tried to settle back into sleep. But then, they opened their eyes once more and saw the bear above them on the bed. The bear lunged, and the narrator jumped out of bed, screaming. In a fit of terror, the narrator grabbed the bear and threw it into the fireplace, watching with relief as it burned. Now 19, and moving into their own place, they found a large box left on the front porch. Upon bringing it inside, they discovered a cupboard they didn't remember packing. They left it in the living room, but when they returned, there it was, the bear sitting on the cupboard, staring right at them. The story itself is decent, but that image is truly unsettling. It's a classic tale of a haunted or possessed item. New Cell Phone is a short creepypasta, so I'll read it in full. It goes like this. A couple of months ago, my friend's cousin, a single mother, bought a new cell phone. After a long day at work, she came home, placed her phone on the counter, and went to watch TV. Her son approached her and asked if he could play with her new phone. She told him not to call anyone or mess with the text messages, and he agreed. At around 11:20 p.m., feeling drowsy, she decided to tuck her son in and go to bed. She walked to his room, but he wasn't there. Panicked, she ran to the other room and found him asleep on her bed, with the phone in his hand. Relieved, she gently took the phone from his hand to check it. As she browsed through the phone, she noticed only minor changes, like a new background and some other small tweaks. Then she opened her saved pictures. She started deleting the photos her son had taken until only one new picture remained. When she first saw it, she was in disbelief. It was a photo of her son sleeping on her bed, but the picture was taken by someone else. The photo showed the left half of an elderly woman's face hovering above him. The image in question is on screen now. It's a chilling story that feels disturbingly plausible, adding to its eerie nature. The 4 children for sale photo is a haunting image that occasionally resurfaces on meme pages and various corners of the internet. At first glance, it might seem like some sort of dark joke. After all, who would actually sell their children? But tragically, this photograph is all too real. Taken in 1948, it shows 4 children being put up for sale by their mother in Chicago, Illinois, as the family struggled with crippling poverty. Though there were rumors that the mother had been paid to stage the photo, the heartbreaking truth is that she was genuinely trying to sell her children. Within 2 years of the photo being taken, all 4 kids, along with a baby she was carrying, were sold off to different families. Ryanne and her brother Milton were sold for just $2 to an abusive family, where they were forced to work long hours in fields and were even confined to a barn. Milton recalls being called a slave by his so-called new father. The other 2 children, Lana and Ellen, were adopted into different families, which fortunately spared them from the harsh conditions their siblings endured. The photo remains a powerful reminder of the desperation and heartbreak some families faced during that time. Crime scene photos. Matt Rogers stood outside the Southgate Hotel, drenched from the relentless downpour. It was 11:54 p.m. October 4th, 2015, and his friend John Grahams was supposed to have met him over an hour ago. Growing impatient, Matt finally decided to call John's cell phone, wondering what had held him up. After a few rings, someone answered, but it wasn't John. A voice on the other end identified itself as a Yorkshire police officer, PC James Hartman. The officer calmly informed Matt that his friend John had been murdered. The shock hit Matt hard. Just 3 hours earlier, he had spoken to John, and now he was being told that his friend was dead. The officer mentioned that they were at the scene of the crime behind the Harrington pub in the city center. Matt knew the place well and promised to be there in 10 minutes. When Matt arrived, the area was swarming with police officers and detectives. Yellow tape was being set up around the crime scene. Matt approached the officer he had spoken to on the phone, who confirmed that Matt was now considered a suspect in the case. The horror of the situation intensified for Matt, as he realized he was now connected to this brutal crime in ways he couldn't fully understand. PC Hartman asked Matt if there was anyone who should be informed about John's death. Matt thought for a moment before offering to call John's family himself. He scrolled through his contacts and called John's brother, Jack. The conversation was tense. Jack was understandably distraught, disbelieving, and angry when Matt delivered the news that John had been murdered. Jack demanded to know who had done it, but Matt had no answers to give. He warned Jack that he too might be considered a suspect and urged him to come to the crime scene quickly. Jack, still in shock and disbelief, questioned whether Matt was playing some kind of sick joke. Matt, frustrated and desperate to be believed, insisted that he was telling the truth. To convince Jack of the seriousness of the situation, Matt decided to send him photos of the crime scene. He took out his phone and, using the poor quality camera, snapped a few pictures of John's lifeless body. Blood covered the area, and a knife protruded from John's stomach. Matt attached the images to a message with the captions, "Jack, this is not a joke, and your brother has been murdered." Soon after, Jack called back, sounding panicked. He claimed to know who had killed John, saying it must be Adam. According to Jack, the leather jacket John was wearing in the photo had been given to him by Adam 2 days earlier. Jack was certain that Adam was responsible, but Matt found the logic shaky at best. Still, Jack was adamant and promised to explain everything once he arrived. Minutes later, Jack's motorbike roared around the corner and he pulled up to the crime scene. As Jack approached, he continued to rant about the leather jacket, convinced that it somehow implicated Adam in the murder. Matt, still unable to make sense of the connection, watched Jack hurry over to the police officers, determined to tell them his suspicions. As Jack spoke with the police, a chilling realization washed over Matt. In all the chaos, he remembered something crucial, something that made his blood run cold. During their phone conversation, He had never told Jack where the crime scene was located. Yet, Jack had arrived at the exact spot without any guidance. The photos, the jacket, and Adam, it all seemed irrelevant now. The real horror was standing right in front of him. Jack had known where to go without being told. The end. The end is a widely recognized liminal space image that has captured the imagination of internet users for many years. Known within the Backrooms lore as a false end, this image depicts an eerie library bathed in unsettling yellow lighting, reminiscent of the infamous Backrooms aesthetic. The photo shows an abandoned library with a prominent sign that reads, "The End." It turns out the image was captured inside a Borders bookstore. Borders was a chain of bookstores, music stores, and cafes that operated from 1971 until it went out of business in 2014. A man from the city was coming to take our photograph. I'd never had my picture taken before. My parents had one of my brother James when he was a baby, but Eliza and I hadn't been born yet. That picture hangs over our mantel in a gold frame. Dad used to say we'd have a family photo taken when we could afford it. Now he says better late than never. James and I were drawing in the living room while Mom and Dad sat in the kitchen, sipping water and tea. Mom was quietly crying. Catherine, Dad said, "We can't let this destroy us. We did the best we could." Mom mumbled something about finding a better doctor, but Dad reassured her that there was nothing more we could have done. Upstairs, Eliza lay in her best Sunday dress, looking peaceful as if she were just sleeping. A few days ago, Dr. Coffin had visited. Eliza had been moaning for hours before Mom went to take care of her, moving me to James's room for the night. I heard her retching all night. The next day, I asked Dr. Coffin what was wrong. He smiled lazily, revealing 2 gold teeth, and said, "Your little sister is very sick, but I'll do everything I can." Mom told me Eliza had a bad fever, and that I could see her if I wanted, as long as I didn't wake her. The house was quiet and dark as I crept upstairs. Eliza's room was almost pitch black, save for a few rays of sunlight falling at the foot of her bed. Her forehead was red and wet, her hair matted to it. I touched her, and she was burning up. The man from the city was downstairs talking to Dad about how much a daguerreotype photograph would cost. Mom and I were in Eliza's room. She was brushing Eliza's hair while I placed flowers around her. I didn't like looking at Eliza. I'd seen a dead person before, Uncle Jed, who was killed by robbers. Even with bullet holes in his cheeks and dark circles under his eyes, there was something certain, something definite about him. But with Eliza, it was the stillness that scared me. It looked like she could have been alive, but there was no gentle rise and fall of her chest, no soft whistle of breath from her nostrils. The absence of these small signs made my stomach churn with unease. Dad's voice echoed from downstairs, asking if we were ready. I answered, and soon footsteps started up the stairs. Dad entered, followed by the tall man with the camera, and James, who looked like he didn't want to be there. The photographer, with a face as lined as wood, examined Eliza. "If you want this to be a family portrait and memorial," he said in a thick German accent, "I'll need to decorate the girl to make her appear alive." He pulled out a small paint set and said he'd paint her eyes to make them look open. My father glanced at my mother, who nodded through her tears. The man knelt beside Eliza's bed, and a few minutes later, he stood up, saying she was ready. When we looked at Eliza, we saw that he had painted eyes on her eyelids, thin black lines with a brown iris and jet black pupils. He'd even added eyelashes. The eyes weren't grotesque, but they were just off. Eliza's eyes were blue, not brown. Something about it felt wrong. It was as if those painted eyes had brought her back from death, even if only a little. The man asked if we were ready, and we gathered around Eliza's bed. He warned us that the exposure would take 40 to 50 seconds, so we needed to stay as still as possible to avoid blurring. I figured Eliza's face would come out perfectly clear. Eliza was buried the next day. We held a funeral for her at St. Catherine's Church and buried her in the graveyard next to it. Mom wept when the casket was closed, realizing she'd never see Eliza again. The tiny coffin seemed odd to me, and though James struggled with carrying it, he managed. A lot of people came, all dressed in black, while Eliza lay in white. They washed the paint off her eyes before laying her to rest, but she still made me uneasy, though I couldn't pinpoint why. We placed the photograph in a gold frame on the mantle. It was comforting to see her face and remember her, but after a few weeks, I began to look at the photograph less. One day, I stopped and studied it again, noticing something that filled me with a sinking dread. As I stared at Eliza's face in the photo, I felt a cold, creeping fear. Something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I squinted at her thin cheeks, her pursed lips, and those painted eyes, trying to understand. It felt like something monstrous was just beyond my sight, grinning at me while I searched for it. Then, suddenly, I remembered what the man with the camera had said that day. The realization hit me like a heavy stone, explaining the unnatural fear that had been growing inside me. As the truth dawned on me, the room spun, and I was struck by numb, raw shock. I wondered how I hadn't noticed it before, recalling how long it had been since the burial, and how tired Dr. Coffin had looked the last time he visited. Eliza, unlike the rest of us, was blurry. Attachment 1 is a short but chilling creepypasta written by Top Ramen. Here's a summary of the story. You hear a sound. It's your phone. Picking it up, you see a message from an anonymous number. You ignore it since your mom is the only one who has your number, and it's a new phone. You return to what you were doing, but the phone buzzes again. Another message. Annoyed, you decide to reply and inform them they've got the wrong number. Just then, you hear a thud against your window. You check, but no one is there. Another sound from your phone draws your attention. A new message, this time with an attachment. Curiosity piqued, you open it. It's an image. In fact, it's 3 images. They are photos of you, taken from inside your closet. If you've ever explored the dark corners of the internet for creepy images, there's a good chance you've encountered the name Eyeless Jack, or at least the chilling image associated with him. Even if the name is unfamiliar, the image itself is hard to miss. A figure in a tight, dark hoodie, wearing a white mask with large black holes where the eyes should be, looming ominously over what appears to be a bed. The first appearance of this unsettling image dates back to June 7, 2010, when a user named Arnon posted it on the online forum 4chan under a thread titled Nightmare Fuel. The thread included a collection of disturbing images from various sources, including video games. Among these was the original picture of Eyeless Jack, which has haunted viewers ever since. Despite being widely reposted across the internet, it wasn't until 2012 that a story was crafted to accompany the image. The narrator describes waking up to see a creature in a black hoodie and a dark blue mask with no nose or mouth, staring down at them. The figure has no eyes, just empty black sockets oozing a black substance. According to the original story, Eyeless Jack was once a normal 19-year-old named Jack Nyras. He became a victim of a cult's horrifying ritual, which involved removing his eyes and filling the sockets with a mixture of tar and blood. Something went wrong during the ritual, transforming Jack into the creature depicted in the image. The creepypasta goes on to describe how Eyeless Jack became a serial killer, known for sneaking into people's homes at night and surgically removing their kidneys while they slept. By the time his victims wake up, their kidneys are already gone, eaten by the creature. I found a digital camera in the woods. The story begins with someone discovering a silver box in the woods, which turns out to be a digital camera with pre-existing photos on it. The rest of the creepypasta consists of examining these eerie photos. Let's delve into these photos together and see what we uncover. The first image seems unremarkable at first glance. Some claim there's a bloody handprint on the tree to the right, but it looks normal to me. The second image features a sign urging people to stop, with nothing particularly creepy around it. However, it hints at the photographer venturing into a restricted area. Image 3 is where the atmosphere really starts to build. It sets the story's tone more effectively than words could. Moving on, many of the subsequent images might not seem noteworthy at first. In the next significant image, you can spot a man or a man-like figure lurking behind a tree. Image 8 is another atmospheric shot where some believe they see a small creature watching from above. It's unclear if it's something significant, but it warrants further examination. Image 9 shows eyes peering down, with a similar shape to the one in the prior image, suggesting the presence of more creatures. Image 11 captures an old structure in the woods, where a figure can be seen standing in a window. Image 15 shows an anarchy symbol spray-painted on the building's walls, which could also be interpreted as pentagrams. In image 17, we finally see the creature, which appears to move lopsidedly. Following this, there's a photo of a tower in the fog, with subsequent images documenting the photographer's ascent. Eventually, they reach a point where they can remove a plank, revealing a humanoid creature on the other side. This figure somewhat resembles the rake, though it's hard to be certain. The final series of photos show the photographer trying to escape, with the last image taken from the ground, likely where the camera was found. The Cooper family falling body photo is a notorious cursed image that first appeared online in 2009. The story behind it claims that in the 1950s, the Cooper family purchased an old house. One evening, the father took a photo of his two children, their mother, and their grandmother. However, when the film was developed, the family was shocked to see what appeared to be a body falling from the ceiling on the left side of the image. This unexpected and eerie discovery left them deeply unsettled, as no such figure was present when the photo was taken. While this tale has become the most commonly associated explanation for the image, many believe the photo is a fake. On Reddit, users have speculated about its authenticity. One popular theory suggests that the unsettling figure was added as a prank by someone developing the film. The family, unaware of the prank, believed they had captured something paranormal. Such pranks were not uncommon at the time, as double exposure techniques were often used to create ghost images as novelty items. Interestingly, someone claiming to be one of the boys from the Cooper family later came forward. He stated that he and his brother were the two boys in the photo, which was taken in 1959. However, he mentioned that he had never seen this particular photo before, as his mother had a habit of discarding pictures she didn't like. The man also pointed out that their last name was actually Copper, not Cooper, and expressed frustration that someone had altered a family photograph and created a fictional story around it. However, it's important to remember that anyone can claim to be someone they're not on the internet, so the true origins of the photo and the identity of the supposed falling body remain a mystery. I looked through some old family pictures and something doesn't add up, is a story from the No Sleep subreddit posted in 2019 by Rainwriter. It follows a man named Steven who notices something peculiar while revisiting his family photo album. The story opens with Steven reminiscing about his parents who passed away 2 years earlier. In his nostalgia, he begins flipping through the family photo album. One photo in particular always puzzled him. A picture taken when he was very young, standing in front of a restaurant. Determined to find the location, Steven embarks on a journey to track down the town and restaurant where the photo was taken. After some research, he concludes that the restaurant must no longer exist, as the town he visits has no such establishment. Undeterred, Steven posts the photo on a German subreddit, seeking assistance. Initially, the responses offer no substantial leads. But then, Steven receives a message from an unfamiliar user named Michael. Michael claims to have a photo identical to Steven's, but with different people in it. Intrigued, Steven replies, and Michael sends a link to the image. Astonishingly, the photo is an exact replica, down to the smallest detail, except for the people featured. The two men continue their conversation, discovering that many of their family photos are eerily identical, aside from the individuals in them. This unsettling revelation prompts Steven and Michael to arrange a meeting. Steven brings his photo album to Michael's house, where they exchange greetings and start comparing pictures. Steven notices Michael's elaborate computer setup, indicating he works online extensively. As they sift through the photos, they realize that Steven's photos are dated 2005, while Michael's are from 1992, a 13-year difference, yet otherwise identical. The conversation shifts to their parents, both of whom died 2 years earlier under different circumstances. Neither could recall the exact dates of their deaths, adding to their confusion. As night falls, Steven decides to head home, leaving some photos with Michael for further examination. Michael mentions a friend who could determine if the images were doctored. Steven returns home, awaiting updates. A day later, Michael contacts Stephen, urging him to check his email. The images were confirmed as doctored, with the backgrounds taken from Soviet Union propaganda photos. This revelation baffles both men, who cannot comprehend why someone would create these fake memories, or how they could recall places that never existed. Michael promises to dig deeper and get back to Stephen. However, a few days later, Stephen receives a distressing phone call from Michael, urging him not to investigate further. Before Stephen can ask why, Michael hangs up. Subsequent attempts to reach him go unanswered. Days later, Stephen learns from a tabloid that Michael has died by suicide, jumping from a bridge. In desperation, Stephen sneaks into Michael's house, finding his computer smashed and papers scattered. Among the documents, Stephen discovers scientific reports detailing various stages of a memory alteration project. These reports reveal that test subjects were implanted with artificial memories to simulate normal lives. The documents outline procedures such as growth acceleration, mind enhancement, and social behavior therapy, culminating in a report on project termination. The project was deemed unsuccessful, and test subjects were to be euthanized, though some, including Stephen, were left under surveillance to observe their adaptability. As Stephen sifts through the papers, he hears intruders discussing Michael and the subject's interactions. He flees, realizing he has no genuine memories of his parents or his past, only fabricated images. Level 188, also known as the Courtyard of Windows, is one of the most recognizable and eerie levels within the Backrooms mythos. Classified as a Class 5 difficulty level, it is considered highly unsafe due to the presence of hostile entities. Despite its danger, the level has gained significant notoriety, in large part due to a striking image associated with it, an image that has been widely circulated among fans of the Backrooms. The photograph in question is not merely a work of fiction. It is a real photo taken at a real location, the Holiday Inn at London Heathrow. The hotel's architecture is strange and almost surreal, with its labyrinthine corridors and unique design, making it an ideal candidate for the Backroom's unsettling atmosphere. I Found a Disturbing Photo in My Family Photo Album is a creepypasta written by KM, posted in 2020. The story follows an unnamed narrator who uncovers a chilling family secret. The tale begins with the narrator explaining their mother's strict rule about never looking through the family photo album. As a child, the narrator was curious, but eventually forgot about the forbidden album. Recently, the narrator noticed their mother appearing physically and emotionally weaker, prompting more frequent visits. One night, after returning from an evening with friends, the narrator finds their mother absent, and the photo album conspicuously placed on the coffee table. Seizing the opportunity, they carefully open the album. At first, the photos are unsurprising, old images of their mom and grandparents. But one photo catches the narrator's eye, a picture of their grandfather as a teenager, holding a baby. The baby appears normal in size, but has the face of an old woman, an unsettling image that was the oldest in the album. Determined to uncover the truth, the narrator visits their grandparents at a nursing home. A normal conversation quickly turns tense when the narrator mentions the photo, prompting their grandfather to angrily refuse to discuss it. The narrator, now more curious than ever, decides to visit the old family house, which had been passed down through generations. They plan a trip, saying goodbye to their mother and heading to the house. Upon arrival, the narrator finds the house in surprisingly good condition. Inside, it looks like a typical home from its era, mostly empty except for an old non-functional TV. As they explore, a strange noise from the wall catches their attention, like an animal trapped inside. Despite rationalizing that old houses make noises, the sound seems too peculiar to ignore. The narrator rushes to a local DIY store, buys a hatchet, and returns to the house. They pry up a floorboard and shine a flashlight into the dark space below. As the noise intensifies, they remove a second floorboard, creating enough room to look inside. Here's the exact quote describing what they saw. There in the corner of the crawl space was the most repulsive and disgusting creature I have ever seen. It had human-like flesh that sagged like a puddle around its lump-like body, as if it was wearing a skin that was far too big for it. Its lifeless, hollow black eyes stared back at me like I was looking into eternal darkness. It seemed almost human, It had hands and feet with nails that curled around like infectious, discolored spirals. It opened its mouth to reveal the most rotten and vile teeth I've ever seen. There were many of them, racked up inside the mouth of the being, as if it had grown multiple sets of teeth on top of one another. They varied in decay as they went further into its mouth. Horrified, the narrator calls the police, who instruct them to leave the house while they handle the situation. Traumatized, the narrator avoids their family for a while. Weeks later, they return to their mother's house, only to find new tenants who claim no knowledge of her. Desperate for answers, the narrator visits the nursing home, only to learn their grandfather was arrested for imprisoning and torturing his sister. The chilling revelation raises more questions than it answers, leaving the narrator and readers unsettled. The photograph is another short creepypasta. During one summer in the 1950s, a group of friends stumbled upon an old, abandoned house deep in the woods. Intrigued, they decided to explore inside. In the center of one room, they found a water hole. 3 of the boys decided to swim, while the others stayed dry and took pictures with a camera they had brought along. Fast forward 30 years to 1982, when a man hiking in the same woods discovered an old camera. He took it to the local police station, hoping to find its owner. The police managed to develop the film, though most of the photos were too damaged to be useful. However, a few survived, including the last one taken before the camera was lost. It captures the boys in the abandoned house, but something is disturbingly wrong with their faces, which appear distorted and unnatural. The series of photos ends abruptly, and the identities of the boys have never been uncovered. Even more unsettling is the fact that their bodies were never found, and what happened to them remains a mystery to this day. The image attached to this story is undoubtedly the most critical part. While the story sets up a compelling mystery, it is the eerie photograph that truly amplifies the fear factor. Chain letters are messages people send to others, often with vague threats of bad luck or harm if the message isn't spread. Think of them like the Smile Dog creepypasta, but in real life. The Teddy chain letter starts ominously. Once you read this chain letter, you cannot get out. Finish reading this until it is done. I am 7 years old. I have no eyes and blood all over my face. I am dead. The letter goes on to describe people who died because they didn't send the chain letter to anyone. 0 people leads to your death. Sending it to 1 to 6 people results in injury. Sending it to 7 to 11 people causes a big fright, and sending it to 12 or more ensures safety and good fortune. Next up is the Clarissa chain letter, a pretty popular one. It reads, "Warning, this is not a joke. Carry on reading or you will die." The story goes, once there was a little girl called Clarissa. She was 10 years old and lived in a mental hospital because she killed her mom and dad. She got so bad she went on to kill all the staff in the hospital. So the government decided that the best idea was to get rid of her. The rest of the letter explains how they tried to kill Clarissa humanely, but something went wrong and she died in immense agony. Now she attacks people who do not forward the chain letter. Dollthing.jpg is a haunting image that has circulated on the internet for years, leaving many unsettled by its eerie appearance. Interestingly, this image has crossed paths with many people, particularly because it was featured in a Minecraft horror map, embedding it deeply in the memories of those who encountered it in that context. The origins of this image date back much earlier than its appearance in Minecraft. Around 2006 to 2007, it became associated with a creepypasta called Gurgle and Bugman. However, like many images tied to creepypastas, the true origin of the picture predates its association with any story. Tracing its roots, the image first surfaced around the end of 2004. It originated from a Japanese image board where a thread titled, "This girl is creepy. Do your magic and make her cute," challenged users to edit the image to make it less disturbing. The image quickly became a meme, circulating widely across various platforms. The Man in the Painting is a creepypasta story that was uploaded to the Creepypasta wiki in 2013. The tale centers around a man who becomes increasingly disturbed by a painting in his possession, particularly because its eyes seem to follow him no matter where he moves. While he's aware of the common optical illusion that causes this effect in paintings, What unnerves him is that this particular painting defies those tricks. It continues to follow him even when it shouldn't. Determined to uncover the truth, the man sets out to find the artist who created the painting. His search leads him to a website where he discovers the name of the artist, El Pinte de Color, or the Painter of Color. The site features several paintings similar to his, all done in a linear perspective style. At the bottom of the page, two names are listed, Jose Sanchez and Adamo Bacchi. Intrigued, the man turns to Google for answers, but oddly, every search for Adamo directs him back to Jose. So he begins his investigation with Jose Sanchez. Jose Sanchez, as the man discovers, has a Wikipedia page that reveals a dark history. He was murdered at the age of 40, stabbed to death. The killer was never identified, though suspicion fell on Adamo. Adamo was tried twice for the crime, but was acquitted both times. A witness claimed to have seen Adamo at the crime scene, at a bar, and on a golf course, adding to the mystery. The story takes a bizarre turn when Adamo himself is murdered. His house is set on fire with him inside. Strangely, the only item that survived the blaze was a painting. During the trial for Adamo's murder, in a surreal twist, Adamo walks into the courtroom and confesses to kill himself. This twist seems intended to be significant, but it ends up feeling more confusing than impactful. The story leaves readers questioning whether the paintings themselves were somehow coming to life and causing the deaths, or if the narrative was simply poorly translated. In the early 90s, the beloved children's show Barney and Friends debuted on PBS, quickly capturing the hearts of preschoolers with its messages about friendship and its colorful cast of characters. Barney, the purple dinosaur, became an enduring pop culture figure, often associated with innocent and joyful childhood memories. However, there's one image circulating online that casts this typically cheerful character in a much more sinister light. The photograph shows a small, smiling child in a red and blue jacket standing on the grass, but in the background, an eerie figure resembling Barney lurks. Unlike the friendly character seen on TV, this Barney has lifeless black eyes, a distorted grin, and an unsettling appearance that has left many viewers deeply disturbed. The image has prompted countless people to scour the internet in search of an explanation for its creepiness. The origins of this unsettling photo can be traced back to a Reddit post from 2016 in the r/creepy subreddit. It was shared by a user named Radioactive with the caption, "A creepy photo of my friend when he was young." The user linked to an Imager page, explaining that their friend had found the photo while looking through old childhood pictures. The image appears to have been taken from a photo album. Despite numerous comments on the post discussing the unnerving nature of the image, the original poster never provided further details. They mentioned that their friend was at work and that they'd try to get more information, but no updates ever followed. As a result, the true story behind the creepy Barney figure remains unknown. Some speculate that it might have been a poorly made costume for a birthday party or another event. "Mommy, can I stay in your room tonight? The walls won't stop staring at me. I rolled out of bed. There's nothing in your room, sweetie. Go back to sleep." But they won't stop staring at me. Sighing, I took Will by the hand and led him back to his room. "Walls can't see, Will. They don't have eyes." "Mine do," he insisted. "They do, and they keep looking at me." As we crossed into his room, I settled him back on his bed. The walls were lined with pictures of family members, past and present. "See, look," Will said, pointing at one particular picture across from his bed. It was a large portrait of his great-great-grandmother, long deceased. The way the photograph was taken made it seem like her eyes followed you, always staring at whatever was in front of the picture. Right now, that was Will's bed. "That's just an old picture," I reassured him. "It only looks like she's staring." "Can you take it down, please?" he pleaded. I sighed again. "Sure." As I reached up to take down the portrait, her eyes seemed to lock with mine. The painting is a Creepypasta story that was uploaded to Creepypasta.com in 2012. The story revolves around a young artist named Lisa who has been tormented by disturbing dreams throughout her life. One recurring nightmare in particular haunted her, a dark hallway and a malevolent clown chasing her down. The terror from these dreams left Lisa exhausted, fearful of falling asleep. After countless nights of broken sleep, Lisa would often wake up screaming, unable to escape the horror of her nightmares. Her friends and family, concerned for her well-being, urged her to seek professional help. Eventually, Lisa agreed and made an appointment with a therapist. During the session, her therapist suggested a method to confront her fears. She should paint her dreams. The therapist explained that by facing her fears head-on, she could strip them of their power. Though skeptical, Lisa was desperate for relief and willing to try anything. That night, Lisa began to paint her nightmares. Her first attempt didn't satisfy her. Something felt off. She kept working on it late into the night before finally deciding to get some sleep. To her surprise, Lisa fell into a deep, peaceful sleep for the first time in years. The next morning, Lisa woke up feeling rested but wary, thinking it was just a fluke. She went about her day, brushing her teeth and making coffee before returning to the painting. But something still wasn't right. It was the eyes. She hadn't captured them properly. In her dreams, the clown's eyes were the most vivid and terrifying part, yet she struggled to translate them onto the canvas. For months, Lisa worked tirelessly on the painting, staying up late each night trying to perfect the clown's eyes. As the painting progressed, she noticed that her sleep was improving. The better the eyes looked, the more restful her nights became. Finally, after months of effort, Lisa succeeded in making the clown's eyes as hateful and disturbing as they appeared in her nightmares. But as she completed the final brushstroke, something unimaginable happened. The clown in her painting began to emerge from the canvas. Horrified, Lisa screamed and tried to escape, but she tripped over some paint buckets. The last thing she saw was the clown standing over her, holding a knife, just like the one in her dreams. When the police arrived at the scene, they found Lisa's lifeless body. The only clue left behind was the painting she had been working on. According to the police chief, the painting depicted nothing more than a dark, empty hallway. The Wanderer is a creepypasta story that was posted on the Creepypasta wiki in 2010. Written like an old urban legend, the tale revolves around a mysterious and disturbing image that brings tragedy to those who view it. The story follows one such case involving a girl named Jane, whose life took a dark turn in the 1990s after she encountered this unsettling image on a news group. The image in question depicts an empty road flanked by trees, with a faint, ghostly figure of a woman standing in the middle of the road. The figure, known as the Wanderer, is so translucent that her legs are only visible due to light reflecting off the camera's angle. Whether the light comes from headlights or a flashlight, the sight of this eerie figure, with her spider-like arms, is deeply unsettling. The Wanderer was first reported in 1996 by Jane, a college student, who came across the image during a visit with her family. The image was posted on an internet board with the caption, "Do you see me?" Reactions to the image varied. Some people felt sick just looking at it, while others brushed it off as a joke. However, Jane's reaction was far more severe. According to her family, Jane began having terrifying nightmares. She claimed that she would see the Wanderer outside her window, sometimes gliding across the grass, other times just standing there, watching. These visions paralyzed her with fear, and even when she closed her eyes, the image of the Wanderer remained burned into her mind. Her family tried to reassure her that it was all just a figment of her imagination, but Jane was convinced that the Wanderer was real, that it was following her, that it knew her. As Jane's mental state deteriorated, her family grew increasingly worried. She became desperate to avoid sleep, terrified of the nightmares that awaited her. At first, she tried to stay awake by drinking excessive amounts of caffeine and keeping herself active, but soon, her efforts escalated to more extreme and harmful measures, causing even greater concern for her well-being. One day, Jane's mother, noticing the alarming change in her daughter, decided to check on her. After receiving no response to her knocks, she opened Jane's bedroom door to a horrifying sight. Jane had taken her own life, her throat slit, with a note beside her that read, "It won't get me now." The story of the Wanderer is short but impactful, enhanced by the haunting image that accompanies it. The 1983 birthday clown is a chilling image that has haunted the internet for years. often with the claim that it depicts a clown from a 1983 birthday party. However, this isn't a real person or even from a party at all. The figure is actually an animatronic, similar to those old fortune teller machines. This eerie animatronic was created by Aaron Fechter, known for his work with creative engineering, and it originally served as a greeter and information booth at the 1983 IAAPA, International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions Convention. The clown, dressed in a brightly colored outfit and wig crafted by Creative Engineering's costume department, had 6 movements and sat in a booth resembling a carousel, though it had no legs. The booth had 4 white bars and a colorful circular top, which still exist today, though they've been dismantled and stored. The animatronic's unsettling appearance has made it infamous online. It now resides in the basement of Creative Engineering, but its original name and the audio from its show tape remain mysteries. In 2021, footage of the clown at the IAAPA convention surfaced, but it wasn't activated and could only be seen from a distance. Have You Seen This Painting of a Hallway is a chilling tale from the No Sleep subreddit, originally posted by W. Dolphin in 2015. The story unfolds in 2 parts, following a man who receives an eerie painting from his father. The father bought it at an auction, thinking his son might like it, and without much thought, the man hangs it in his office. The painting is simple enough. A hallway with 6 doors and a path leading deeper into what seems to be a house. Things take a turn when the narrator has some friends over and they head into his office to watch videos on his computer. One of his friends, Mark, pauses to examine the painting, commenting that it gives him a creepy feeling. The narrator, on the other hand, finds it oddly mesmerizing. As they both look at the painting, the narrator notices something he hadn't seen before. A faint light at the end of the hallway, casting a subtle shadow. It strikes him as strange, but he dismisses it, thinking it's just a small detail he hadn't noticed. A few days later, while working in his office, the narrator glances at the painting again and is startled to find a new door has appeared. There are now 7. The painting's proportions hadn't changed. The 7th door seemed to belong there naturally. Disturbed, he tries to explain the changes to his wife, but she doesn't believe him, assuming he's imagining things. Determined to figure out what's going on, the narrator starts monitoring the painting closely, even taking photos at his friend Mark's suggestion. For a while, nothing happens. Then one day, he notices something terrifying. A vague, humanoid shape has appeared in the painting, staring directly at him. This frightens him so much that he decides to get rid of the painting, placing it by the trash to be taken out in the morning. With the painting gone, he feels some relief, until he remembers the photo he took. Curious, he opens the image on his computer and is horrified to see that the figure in the painting has moved. Its arms are now raised as if reaching out. He sends the image to Mark, but when Mark tries to view it, he tells the narrator the file is corrupted and can't be opened. The figure in the painting continues to move closer in each new photo, and something else catches the narrator's eye. One of the doors in the painting is now open, revealing a lion's stuffed animal inside. This detail shocks him because it hadn't dawned on him before. His daughter has the exact same stuffed animal. Panicked, he checks on his daughter, finding the lion's stuffed animal on her floor near the closet. He quietly shuts her closet door, moves the dresser in front of it, and hands her the toy before putting her to bed. When he checks the painting again, the door is closed and the lion is no longer visible. The paranoia starts to consume him, leading to arguments with his wife. Eventually, she decides to stay with her parents for a while, hoping some distance will help. The man also considers taking a break, but he feels tethered to the painting, unable to escape its grip. After his wife and daughter leave, he receives an email from Mark urging him to look at the painting again. The attached picture shows a new, 8th door, this one with his wife and daughter walking into it. The creature is lurking just behind them. Frantic, the narrator tries to call his wife, but when she answers, she's unaware of the danger and is just about to take their daughter to the hotel pool. Later that night, the narrator receives a devastating phone call from the police. His wife and daughter were found dead in the hotel pool, a tragic accident. But he knows better. The painting had foretold their doom. Realizing what he must do, the narrator heads towards the closet, ready to confront the creature that has haunted him. While the story is strong on its own, the lack of an accompanying image leaves the reader's imagination to fill in the terrifying blanks. Teeth.jpg. The story begins with the narrator, an art student, explaining that they attend college with 3 friends and roommates: Josh, Lily, and Daniel. The narrator briefly describes each friend's artistic interests, but singles out Daniel as particularly odd. Daniel, a fine artist, is not only weird, but also has a bit of a snobby attitude about his work. After returning from summer vacation, the friends gather to catch up. While everyone else had a typical break, Daniel's summer stands out. He spent most of it at the hospital with his doctor father, developing a strange fascination with touching teeth. The group finds this unsettling, but brushes it off as just another quirk of Daniel's. As time passes, Daniel's behavior grows more distant and rude, and he begins to isolate himself. One night, the narrator and Josh plan a night out and invite both Daniel and Lily. Lily agrees to try and get Daniel to join them, but tells the others not to wait for her. After a fun night, the narrator and Josh return to find both Lily and Daniel missing from their rooms. Curious, the narrator knocks on Daniel's door, which unexpectedly swings open, revealing Daniel's laptop on the bed. On the screen, there's an image file titled teeth.jpg. The next day, Daniel returns, and when he leaves for lectures, the narrator shows Josh the disturbing photo. They decide to show it to Lily as well, but are alarmed to discover she still hasn't returned. In her room, they find her phone with a single unread text that says, "Help me." Worried, they confront Daniel, but the interaction is tense and unproductive. Daniel clearly knows more than he's letting on. Later, the narrator and Josh decide to search through Daniel's satchel, finding a series of unsettling photos of Lily with strange phrases written on the back. They also find a ticket for 2 with an address. The next morning, they follow the lead to a remote, dilapidated building. After some searching, they discover a hidden entrance leading to a cellar. The smell in the cellar is overpowering, and as they venture further, they stumble upon a horrifying scene. Lily is strapped to a medical table, her face grotesquely altered to resemble the image from teeth.jpg. Her hand is sewn to her face, and her mouth and eyes are filled with black wax, creating an eerie, unnatural appearance. Just as they begin to process what Daniel has done in the name of art, the door behind them closes. Josh faints from the shock, leaving the narrator trapped and helpless. As they fear for their lives, they suddenly hear Lily choking, adding a final layer of horror to the scene. The clown with an axe is a well-known cursed image that has circulated online for years. It features a towering clown descending into a basement, seemingly about to approach a family with an axe in hand. However, the origins of this eerie photo are not as sinister as they appear. The image is actually a work of art by renowned American photographer Rosalind Fox Solomon, taken in 1977 and titled Halloween. In the original photograph, the clown isn't holding an axe at all, but rather a black stick. Someone later altered the image by adding the axe to heighten its creepiness. Solomon's art often features unsettling elements like masks and dolls, which she uses to convey symbolism and metaphor. In discussing her Halloween photo, Solomon explained that the looming clown might represent a political figure, while the long, bare arm threatens the children, with the parents seemingly disconnected from the scene. Solomon's work is known for its strange and haunting qualities, making it both unsettling and fascinating. Despite the dark alterations made to her photo, the original intent and artistry behind it remain intriguing. Check the Camera. Uploaded to the Creepypasta wiki in 2011, Check the Camera starts with a familiar haunted house setup, eerie footsteps echoing up the stairs at night, tapping on windows, and the unsettling sound of someone walking through empty rooms. While these disturbances don't particularly bother the narrator, they deeply affect her son. She frequently wakes up to find him sleeping on her floor, terrified by whatever is haunting them. Even her partner, initially skeptical, begins to hear the strange noises, which soon start to drive him mad. The tension escalates when her partner gets scratched by the unseen entity. As the haunting intensifies, it becomes clear that something is seriously wrong. Tragically, her son eventually takes his own life, leaving behind a chilling message. He claims to have captured the creature, and all she needs to do is check the camera. The story concludes with a single, terrifying photograph, the only one on the roll. Next up is SCP-895, an entry from the SCP Foundation that's particularly intriguing due to its unique use of live video feeds. Here's a brief overview. SCP-895 is an ornate oak coffin, recovered by SCP personnel from a mortuary after reports of unusual footage captured by surveillance equipment at the location. Mortuary staff were unable to explain how SCP-895 arrived there or who transported it. When agents attempted to open the coffin, they found it empty. However, anyone observing the live camera feed from the scene experienced data expunged, a disturbing and potentially dangerous phenomenon that led to severe psychological trauma. SCP-895 disrupts video and photographic surveillance equipment within a 50-meter radius, causing vivid, disturbing hallucinations on the footage. The closer the camera is to SCP-895, the more intense the disruptions become. Interestingly, these effects do not extend to people physically present in the area. Only those viewing the live feed are affected. Red Mist, also known as Squidward's Suicide, is a classic creepypasta that emerged in 2010. The story revolves around an alleged lost episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, where Squidward performs disastrously at a concert and later, in a deeply disturbing turn of events, takes his own life. The tale became infamous not just for its unsettling narrative but also for the eerie image that accompanied it, a haunting portrayal of Squidward with red, soulless eyes. The origins of this image have been a topic of much debate, but they aren't fully known. However, there are some strong leads. The image of Squidward used in the Red Mist creepypasta has been traced back to a particular photo of Squidward that, when compared, matches perfectly with the Red Mist version. Despite some skeptics pointing out minor differences, like the absence of spots on Squidward's head in the Red Mist image, these discrepancies can easily be explained by photo editing. Ashbrook Lane is a creepypasta rooted in the eerie fascination with strange and unsettling images found on Google Maps. The story, posted on the Creepypasta wiki in 2014, begins with the narrator reminiscing about his childhood home on Ashbrook Lane. While he has vague memories of playing outside and spending time with a neighbor, the most vivid memories are far from innocent. They're the terrifying nightmares that plagued him night after night. In these recurring nightmares, the narrator recalls waking up in the early morning hours, paralyzed by the sense of a menacing presence in his room. He would hear raspy breathing moving from the foot of his bed to his bedside, until the figure of a gaunt man in a lab coat would appear before him, his breath hot on the narrator's face. The man would then grab him with skeletal fingers, drag him out of bed, and haul him toward a mysterious room hidden behind a wall, the rest of the ordeal blurred in his memory. Each time, he would wake up in his parents' bed, dismissed as a sleepwalker by his worried parents. The nightmares became a nightly occurrence, each more violent than the last. The man would use a scalpel to inflict pain, sometimes even biting the narrator's fingers. His greatest fear was being taken into the hidden room and never being found again. These horrifying episodes continued until his family eventually moved, bringing an end to the nightmares. Years later, as an adult, the narrator revisits these memories and decides to confront his past. When he asks his parents about the house, his mother reveals that she too experienced strange occurrences, visions of dead bodies, walls splattered with blood, and the sound of crying when no one else was around. His father, however, was reluctant to discuss it. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he returns to Ashbrook Lane. A woman named Andre gives him a tour of the house, but he feels uneasy, especially when they reach the area where the hidden room used to be. When he questions her about what was behind the wall, she tries to dismiss his concerns with a fabricated story. Realizing he knows more than she thought, she agrees to tell him the truth, just not in the house. Over coffee, she reveals the dark history of the house. In 1953, Dr. Henry Fenton, his wife Mary, and their teenage son Raymond moved into the house. After Mary's tragic death from a fall down the stairs, Henry became consumed by his work, neglecting his son. Raymond, distraught and neglected, fell into a downward spiral of drugs and alcohol. One night, A drunk and enraged Henry mistook Raymond for an intruder and fatally stabbed him with a scalpel. Realizing his mistake too late, Henry tried to save his son, but Raymond died in his arms. Devastated by his actions, Henry took his own life, slashing his wrists and bleeding out beside his son. The narrator, now understanding the source of his childhood nightmares, decides to look up the house on Google Maps. To his horror, in the reflection of the door, he sees the familiar face of the man from his nightmares, the very face that haunted him as a child. The Buildings on Moore Lane is a creepypasta that was uploaded to the Creepypasta wiki in 2019 by the user DavidBlack123. It recounts the unsettling experiences of the author, whom we'll refer to as David, as he explores a set of eerie, abandoned buildings near his home. The story is straightforward yet effective, blending urban exploration with a touch of the supernatural. David begins by describing the location. The abandoned site is surrounded by 4 streets: Victoria Street, Sizer Street, Ashmore Street, and the main road, Moore Lane. The area consists of 3 derelict buildings with a courtyard in between. Though these buildings are often used as a drug den, David is convinced that something far more sinister is lurking within. His first chilling experience occurs in the middle, 2-story building with broken windows. As he steps inside, David finds evidence of drug use, but sees no one. Despite being sure he's alone, he suddenly hears footsteps approaching. Instinctively, he bolts from the building. Once outside, he pauses to catch his breath, only to realize that the footsteps have followed him. Whoever or whatever it was seemed to have pursued him outside. David runs again, not stopping until he reaches the safety of an enclosed space. Undeterred, David returns to the site a few weeks later for more urban exploration. This time, he enters the second building. After providing a brief history of the structure and explaining how it has fallen into disrepair, he makes his way to the top floor. It's there that he hears the same ominous footsteps from before, but this time they're accompanied by a haunting, moaning sound, like the mournful cry of a creature lamenting death itself. Terrified, David sprints out of the building, never looking back. Fortunately, he never catches a glimpse of the entity that produced those sounds, nor does it seem to notice him. David concludes by mentioning that the buildings have since been blocked off, but for those daring enough, it's still possible to climb over the wall using a trash can pictured in one of the images he provides. Cursed images. A cursed image is meant to unsettle, upset, or disturb the viewer. These images are considered a form of visual creepypasta and spread quickly. An album was uploaded to the Creepypasta wiki in 2018 by the author Hopeless Night Owl. The creepypasta is rather short, so we'll be going through it together. Whenever we visit my grandpa's house, I always look at the old photo albums. I've been doing it since I was 11. I'm 15 now. I always find them strangely intriguing. My whole family history contained within these archives. There are wedding albums, vacation albums, holiday albums, all kinds of albums. I especially like seeing what my aunts and uncles looked like before I was born. My favorite ones, however, are the ones that date back even further, like the ones that contain my grandpa's old army photos and the ones from when he was a kid. I have always been a history buff, but my favorite one of all is the oldest. This one has pictures from the 1870s all the way up until the 1890s. Photography for special occasions was obviously a lot more formal back then. In every photo, the subject is dressed in his or her Sunday best. The subject is almost always alone. He or she is always sitting, and they generally look very uncomfortable. People in these photos often look blank and expressionless. One of them is a teenage girl with a missing arm. Back in the 19th century, I guess they weren't allowed to smile for photos. They all have this blank look on their faces. All the makeup doesn't help either. It makes them look rather pale. Another thing I noticed is that, as far as I can tell, no subject ever appears twice in the album. On July 10th, 2020, a Reddit user named GrizzlyPanda5 posted an eerie image that quickly caught the attention of many, sparking a wave of online curiosity. The photograph shows 2 children looking down from a window, a girl with a sweet smile and a boy with a blank, emotionless stare. But what truly unsettles viewers is the dark silhouette of a woman standing behind them. Her entire body is shrouded in shadow, with only her eyes eerily visible, staring off into the distance. Something about the lighting in the image feels off. Even though the woman is positioned close to the window, where light should reveal her features, she remains just a shadow with glowing eyes. The image actually comes from a scene in a Japanese short film titled Only the Two of Us, released in 2005 as a spin-off to the original Tales of Terror from Tokyo series. The film follows a high school tutor and her student as they encounter a series of terrifying paranormal events. In the scene from which this image was taken, a girl walks past an apartment complex and waves to the children at the window. Moments later, the mysterious shadowy figure appears behind them. However, the unsettling eyes seen in the Reddit post were not part of the original film scene. They were most likely added by the Reddit user to heighten the image's creepy factor. SCP-2808 is a really interesting concept for an SCP. Descriptions of SCP-2808 itself are incomprehensible in the context of official documentation. A similar effect occurs with visual representations. Any action taken regarding SCP-2808 in the course of an individual's position in a bureaucratic structure results in the immediate alteration of that position to beautifier, which entails the often violent subversion of standard operating procedure with a goal of producing aesthetically appealing artworks. The subject's original position and job responsibilities are impossible to fill or carry out, as attempts result in overwhelming visual hallucinations of abstract patterns. The reason I'm talking about this SCP isn't because of its effects, but because of the image attached to the SCP's page. The image changes every time you refresh the page. The changes aren't that creepy, but they play well into what the SCP is supposed to do: give you abstract hallucinations. Do You See It Too is a creepypasta shared by a user named Huawei on the Creepypasta wiki in 2022. This relatively new story centers around an enigmatic image that demands a closer look to reveal its secrets. The narrator begins by describing how they discovered the photo, noting that despite its ordinary appearance, it had garnered numerous views, but almost no comments. The original poster claimed the image was empty, but the top comment intriguingly suggested otherwise, saying, "Yes, there is, you just haven't seen it yet," without any further explanation. Curious, the narrator sends the image to their friend Dylan, who is known for getting engrossed in such puzzles. At first, Dylan's intense focus on the photo is amusing, but it quickly turns concerning. Dylan becomes obsessed, locking himself in his room to scrutinize the picture. The narrator, worried but needing rest for work the next day, leaves him alone. The next morning, the narrator cooks breakfast, hoping the aroma will lure Dylan out, but he hears nothing. Approaching Dylan's room, he hears a muffled command to go away. The narrator, torn between concern and his work obligations, leaves for his job. Upon returning home, he finds all the sinks running. When he turns them off, Dylan rushes out to turn them back on, explaining that the noise helps him concentrate before retreating back to his room. Feeling unsafe, the narrator spends the night at his girlfriend's place. Early the next morning, he receives multiple messages from Dylan, each claiming he had discovered the image's secret. Despite his apprehensions, the narrator returns to their apartment, calling out for Dylan without any response. He finds Dylan's computer on with the image displayed, but Dylan is nowhere to be seen. Glancing at the screen, the narrator believes he catches a glimpse of his friend within the photo. Here's the image. Do you see anything? Look closely, it's there. The Expired Film Pack is a creepypasta uploaded to the Creepypasta wiki in July 2013 by a user named Zohan Valentine. This short story revolves around the eerie experience of using expired film with a Polaroid camera. The narrator starts by expressing a fondness for instant cameras, noting their unique ability to capture memories unlike any other medium. Excitedly, they purchased a Polaroid Impulse camera, despite the high cost of film. They managed to buy some film from the Impossible Project, known for producing reliable film for vintage cameras, as well as an expired twin pack from eBay. Initially, the Impossible Project film worked flawlessly, and the narrator quickly used up an entire pack. When it came time to use the expired film, they decided to take a picture of their mom on her day off. To their surprise, the photo developed perfectly, showing no signs of damage or defects. Carefully, the narrator stored the film back in its box and went outside for the rest of the day. Returning home at dusk, they decided to check on the photo again, only to be horrified by what they saw. The image had transformed into a gruesome scene. Their mother's face was mutilated, with her left hand clutching torn skin. Her legs appeared battered, with bone showing through, and her shirt was ripped, exposing organs that seemed to be spilling out. Shocked and unable to comprehend how the innocent photo had become so distorted, the narrator broke down in tears and tore the photo in half. Their mother never inquired about the photo, even when she saw the narrator crying, and they have no intention of telling her what happened. Now left with 9 more films from the expired pack, the narrator is too terrified to take another picture and has sworn off buying expired film ever again. Has anyone else used Expression Captioner? It's that interactive meme site that uses your webcam to take pictures and adds captions based on your facial expressions. My girlfriend and I tried it out recently, and were impressed by how accurately the software detected our expressions and generated fitting captions. One evening, while home alone and bored, I decided to revisit the site to see what other funny captions it could produce. Initially, it was the same as before, capturing still frames of my face every 5 seconds and generating captions. Just when I was about to call it quits and grab some food, the page refreshed and a new button appeared, Live Caption. Curious, I clicked it, my webcam light turned on, and my face appeared on the screen. This mode captured images continuously without needing to click a button. After a few minutes of this, I got bored, closed my laptop, and headed out for a burger. The next morning at work, I opened my laptop to find the site still running. As soon as the Wi-Fi connected, the live captioning resumed. It detected my tired state, and the first picture's caption read, "Needs better pillow, beard not fluffy enough." In my groggy state, I found it amusing and left it running while I worked. An hour later, I remembered the site and checked the picture pool. At first, the captions matched my expressions, albeit in a humorous way, but the more recent ones were unsettlingly off. They no longer aligned with my facial expressions. Instead, they seemed almost ominous and strange. Disturbed, I saved the images online in case they disappeared. Feeling uneasy, I tried to contact the site administrator to commend the intriguing concept. However, clicking the contact button resulted in an error. I attempted to access the site again, but was met with "Name not resolved" messages. Even on my work computer, I couldn't reach the site. It was as if it never existed. Yet, my browser history was filled with visits to the site. I'm not usually superstitious, but this experience left me feeling unsettled. The flooded hallway image is one that many people mistakenly associate with the eerie liminal spaces of the pool rooms, which are digital creations by artist Jared Pike. However, unlike those fictional settings, this photo is very real. It was taken at the Hamamatsu subway station in Japan after it was flooded by a tropical storm named Io. The image captures the surreal and unsettling sight of a hallway submerged in water, giving it an otherworldly appearance that has led many to assume it was just another digitally altered piece of art. The Painting in the Mirror is a creepypasta uploaded to creepypasta.com in 2014, written by Thomas Siricki. It follows an unnamed narrator dealing with the strange occurrences in his new apartment. The story begins with the narrator explaining that people will likely dismiss his tale as the ravings of a madman. His hand shakes as he writes, recalling events from 6 months prior when he needed to find a new apartment. The dorms were too expensive, so he and his parents searched for a more affordable place near his school. They eventually found a small studio apartment priced below market value. Despite some initial reservations, they decided to rent it. Instead of meeting a landlord, they encountered a scrawny courier who handed them an envelope with the lease. If they liked the place, they could sign and mail back the lease. If not, they could return the key. This seemed suspicious, but the narrator had no better options. Against his parents' better judgment, he signed the lease. The apartment came with minimal furniture, except for a mirror hanging opposite the bed. It seemed odd for someone to leave a mirror behind, but the narrator didn't think much of it. However, every time he looked into the mirror, he saw a painting reflected in it, which made him uneasy. He even swore he saw something moving within the painting on his first night. A week later, as school was about to start, the narrator returned from a run and noticed movement in the mirror again. This time, he saw a tall, lopsided creature with ashen skin and long, wiggly limbs moving disjointedly. The figure seemed to be getting closer through the mirror, leaving him terrified and unable to look away. The narrator blacked out and woke up later, feeling groggy and disoriented. He discovered he'd been asleep for a whole week. His phone was dead, his food had spoiled, and he had missed several calls from his worried mother. After reassuring her, he began to question his mental well-being and sought help from a therapist provided by his school. During one session, the therapist suggested he take down the painting if it bothered him so much, which was the first time the narrator considered this option. That night, while tossing and turning, he caught his reflection in the mirror and glanced at the painting again. He realized he had never actually looked at the wall behind him to see if the painting was there. When he finally did, the wall was blank. The painting only existed in the mirror. As he looked back at the mirror, the creature reappeared and started shambling towards him. He couldn't move, paralyzed with fear. The creature eventually reached through the mirror, dug its claw into his shoulder, and began pulling him into the painting. The world inside the painting was dark and spectral, filled with faces screaming in agony, yet unaware of his presence. The story concludes with the narrator now living in a mental facility, haunted by the trauma of that night. He is not allowed near mirrors or paintings, which is for the best. Writing the story was his attempt to prove his sanity, though he ultimately wonders if an afterlife is better than the hellish world inside the painting. SCP-1875 is a particularly dangerous and disturbing entity known as a Victorian-era chess automaton, consisting of 4 parts, SCP-1875-1 through SCP-1875-4. SCP-1875-1 is further divided into SCP-1875-1A and SCP-1875-1B. This machine is a chessboard made from metal cast in the 1800s and uses chess pieces crafted from human bone. The automaton operates through a combination of electromagnets and the brain tissue of 2 twin chess prodigies, creating a disturbing blend of mechanical and biological components. The chessboard itself is eerie and has 5 automation settings, likely corresponding to different difficulty levels. SCP-1875 has been calibrated to possess an incredibly high ELO rating, a measure of chess skill, which has only been tested by researchers with extensive chess knowledge. After the ELO settings were tested, an unsettling email was sent to everyone involved with SCP-1875. This email contained a morphed image purportedly of the twin sisters used in the automaton. The image attached to the email has varying effects on individuals based on their exposure time. Immediate exposure, mild anxiety. 15 minutes, headache and elevated body temperature. 2 hours, restlessness, insomnia, and auditory hallucinations often described as childlike laughter. 4 hours, visual hallucinations and intense anxiety. 7 hours, the subject remains conscious but becomes increasingly unresponsive to external stimuli. 11 hours, a brief period of lucidity where the subject demands immediate access to a computer to view SCP-1875 Image 1AB. 12 hours, self-mutilation begins. 14 hours, effects are redacted. The image is deeply disturbing, reminiscent of early internet horror imagery, with its distorted but vaguely human appearance designed to unsettle viewers. The psychological impact of viewing this image is profound, especially after prolonged exposure. The exact nature of the effects after 14 hours remains unknown due to redaction, but they are implied to be severe and potentially fatal. Marina Mortigard Glasgorf is a classic-era creepypasta that gained significant popularity, being covered by various creepypasta channels and appearing on many top creepypasta lists. The story, despite its brevity, had a lasting impact on early internet horror culture. Let's delve into it together. The narrative revolves around a supposed video on YouTube named Marina Mortigard Glasgorf. Searching for this video yields no results, and the few times anything does appear, it's a short, 20-second clip. In this brief segment, a man stares expressionlessly at the camera, then grins during the last 2 seconds. The background remains undefined, adding to the unsettling nature of the footage. However, this 20-second clip is only a fraction of the full video, which supposedly lasts 2 minutes. The entire video was removed by YouTube after it led to a series of horrifying events. According to the story, 153 people who watched the full video gouged out their eyes and mailed them to YouTube's main office in San Bruno, California. These individuals also committed suicide in various ways, leaving behind cryptic inscriptions carved on their forearms, which remain undeciphered. It is unclear how they managed to mail their eyes after gouging them out. YouTube occasionally uploads the first 20 seconds of the video to prevent people from seeking out and re-uploading the full version. The video was viewed in its entirety by a single YouTube staff member who started screaming 45 seconds in and is now under constant sedation, unable to recall what he saw. Others present in the room only heard a high-pitched drilling sound and did not dare to look at the screen. The uploader of the video was never found, and their IP address was non-existent. Additionally, the man in the video remains unidentified. This next image is a disturbing and uncanny image that features a naked humanoid figure with an unsettling twist. The head of the figure appears to have been replaced, giving the image an eerie, unnatural quality. If you've been active on the internet for a while, you might recognize this image, as it has been circulating online for nearly 2 decades. One of the earliest known appearances of this image was in a YouTube video uploaded 16 years ago, titled in a way that roughly translates to N.NN, temporary broadcast. Video itself is deeply unsettling, beginning with 3 minutes of seemingly random names and numbers. Around the 3:14 mark, text appears on the screen that reads, "These are tomorrow's victims," followed by an image of a hallway and one of the first appearances of the infamous Jeff the Killer. This suggests that the creepy image in question, like Jeff the Killer, was likely sourced from somewhere else and inserted into the video. The mystery persisted until a Redditor stumbled upon a blog post from 2006 on a site called Black Hole Reviews. The blog was reviewing a Japanese horror movie titled Ju-on, The Curse. Among the still frames from the movie included in the blog post was a particular frame that looked strikingly familiar. It matched the body of the figure in the uncanny image, minus the altered head. It seems likely that someone took this still frame from Ju-on, The Curse, replaced the head with another image, and then circulated it online. The head itself is believed to have been taken from a Japanese child robot, which has its own unsettling appearance. Whether in its original or edited form, this image has successfully unnerved countless viewers, making it a memorable and creepy part of internet lore. The story revolves around an unsettling image of a shack in the woods. It begins with the narrator recounting events that started when he was 15 years old. He and his cousin discovered an old, abandoned shack in the woods near their home. Since they lived in a largely wooded area with little else to do, exploring the woods was their primary source of entertainment. One summer afternoon, they decided to finally investigate the shack. When they arrived, they found the door wouldn't open. While the narrator examined a window, his cousin managed to force the door open with a loud cracking noise. Inside, the shack was filthy and the walls were boarded up. While exploring, they discovered a sheet of metal on the ground that seemed out of place. When they moved it, they uncovered a hidden staircase leading down into darkness. Using an iPod for light, they descended the staircase and found a small room with a bed, suggesting someone had been living there. As they looked around, they found a collection of photographs. To their horror, the photos were of the narrator, dating back to when he was 10 years old, and continuing up to their recent discovery of the shack. As they examined the photos, the light from the iPod went out, and they heard the sound of footsteps behind them. The narrator woke up outside the forest, immediately running home, filled with fear and confusion. Once home, he realized he had no idea what had happened to his cousin. Later, his mother informed him that his cousin was missing. The story then jumps to an unspecified time in the future when the narrator receives a package with no return address. Inside the package were a series of photographs. The first photo showed the narrator unconscious in the dark room from before. The next photo depicted his cousin with a severe head injury and blood pooling beneath him. The third photo showed the narrator's current house, taken just 30 minutes before the package was delivered. At the bottom of the box was a note that read, "I'm coming." As the narrator read the note, he heard the sound of a camera clicking from his open window. If you've delved into the horror corners of the internet, you've likely come across the name Trevor Henderson. He's an artist known for crafting some of the most unsettling art online. You might recognize some of his more famous creations like Cartoon Cat, Bridge Worm, Long Horse, or Siren Head. While these are among his most well-known pieces, Henderson has designed many other fascinating and disturbing cryptids. Siren Head, in particular, gained immense popularity, similar to how Slenderman did. The eerie creature went viral, spreading across nearly every part of the internet. However, Henderson's other creations are equally intriguing and impressive. The Visitors is a creepypasta written by Culpic and posted to the Creepypasta wiki in 2021 for a contest. The story centers on a character named Hannah who visits her old school in a town called Ripley, accompanied by her husband Alex. The narrative begins with Hannah and Alex taking a detour to Ripley, where Hannah wants to tour her old elementary school. They call Frank the custodian to let them inside. Frank engages Alex in conversation while Hannah explores the school. As Hannah roams the darkened building, she experiences flashbacks to her childhood. Her school had participated in an experimental teaching program involving robotic teachers who resembled students with their small stature and large eyes. Human teachers monitored these robots during lessons, and the experiment was initially deemed a success, with significant improvements in test scores for all 50 participating students. However, the experiment was cut short after a disturbing image of the robotic teachers appeared in the local newspaper, unsettling the community and prompting parents to withdraw their children from the program. Following the school's closure, the 50 students, including Hannah, were inexplicably drawn to break into the building and take a souvenir. Years later, as Hannah explores the now-abandoned school, she sees a figure moving in the shadows. It is one of the robotic teachers, number 8, which addresses her by name and asks for her student module. Despite the robot's limited communication capabilities, Hannah perceives a sense of fatigue in its movements. She gives it her student module and it joins the other robots in the positions they had assumed in the unsettling newspaper image, finally shutting down. Hannah returns to Frank and leaves with Alex, noticing a plume of smoke coming from the school as they drive away. Images with tragic backstories are a frequent subject for listicles covered by many YouTubers and news outlets. The concept is straightforward. Examine an ordinary photo that appears happy or normal at first glance, but has a much darker story behind it. For instance, consider this image of a father and daughter in Omagh, Northern Ireland. This photo was taken just before the Omagh car bombs in 1998. Tragically, the person who took this photo did not survive, although the father and daughter were fortunate to escape. There are countless photos taken either just before a tragedy or involving someone who had committed a crime prior to the image being captured. One such photo shows what seems to be a father and his daughter posing for picture day. However, the grim reality is that it's actually a photo of Franklin Delano Floyd, who had kidnapped his stepdaughter Suzanne Marie Savakis. This story has many layers and is even the subject of a documentary detailing the events. These examples illustrate that while a photo may capture a moment, it's the hidden stories behind these images that truly matter. A seemingly innocent photo can in fact be taken right before a horrific event. There was a time on the internet when screamers were all the rage. A screamer is essentially a piece of content, whether a video, image, or artwork, designed specifically to jump scare the viewer. Though the term isn't as widely used today, it was quite prevalent back in the day. One of the most infamous screamers was a Korean webcomic known as the Bongchan Dong Ghost. This comic was shared through URLs across various forums. The link directs you to a webcomic that starts off innocuously, with someone recounting their experience. The story begins by claiming it is based on eyewitness accounts and features a schoolgirl walking home late at night. As she makes her way home, she starts to feel increasingly unsafe. As the story progresses, the tension builds up until you reach a point where you can't scroll anymore. Suddenly, the page starts moving on its own, culminating in a short animation with a screamer sound effect. It's a remarkable piece of internet history that harks back to an era dominated by screamers. The wooden bathtub. This strange and unsettling image depicts a man covered in a mysterious brown liquid while sitting in a wooden bathtub. Over the past few years, the photo has made its rounds on various websites and forums, becoming a staple in the cursed image genre. The picture first appeared on the Dank Memes from Site 19 subreddit, posted by a user named Harry Boy, with the caption, SCP-106 in a docile state within containment. For those unfamiliar, the subreddit is dedicated to memes about the SCP Foundation, a collaborative internet-based fiction project centered on a fictional government agency that secures, contains, and protects the population from anomalous entities, hence the acronym SCP. Originating from 4chan, the SCP Foundation is often seen as an evolved form of the Creepypasta community. It features detailed entries written by users, each depicting a different strange or terrifying creature within the SCP universe. In the SCP lore, SCP-106, also known as the Old Man, is an elderly humanoid with the ability to corrode anything it touches. The creature is often depicted as being covered in a brown, mucus-like substance, which may explain the reference in the original Reddit post. Despite its creepy reputation, the image is likely just a picture of a man undergoing mud therapy at a health center. The unsettling expression on the man's face might be due to image editing, or simply a deliberate attempt by the man or the photographer to create something unsettling or humorous.